How often do you think about comfort when you sit down to make some art? I believe feeling good, comfortable, and unburdened often is more important than being inspired in the first place. I said what I said, yes. Having the right tools and feeling good where you're actually making art is more important than the ideas that you have in the first place. Before I found my perfect tools, I was always frantic, looking for something and just feeling out of sorts when I sat down to make art. It wasn't until I figured out what these tools were that I even found my personal art style, not to mention saw a huge improvement in my skill. So today I'm going to reveal the tools that I simply could not live without and actually make me a better artist, but have nothing to do with brush and paper or paint, or it really has nothing to do with art supplies. Discovering these tools changed my mindset, helped me paint longer, and basically made me a more focused artist. So stick around, I'm going to show you what and how. Let me tell you about the home office chair. I sat on a task chair for years in my home studio, and it literally had screws that were starting to poke holes into my butt, and all the cushioning was gone. But you know what? It's like I got used to it. But the minute I actually was like, you know what? I deserve a new chair. I cannot tell you the impact it had on my art making. I didn't get tense in the shoulders. I wasn't getting achy. There was a lot of stuff that was happening to my body that I was just getting used to and ignoring that was impacting my art. I know, I sound like a crazy lady, like go get a chair and you'll be a better artist, but kind of what I mean. Yeah. Embroidery scissors. I never know where my creative brain will take me. And I've learned that needing to snip something quickly happens all the time. And not having the right pair of scissors simply causes a distraction that I don't need, and I certainly know you don't need. I like to have a variety of scissor sizes at the ready. I have a cup full of these scissors right next to me all the while I paint. And the embroidery scissors are ones that I go to often. You can get in the nooks and crannies of something super easy. Honestly, I've used them to pry open jars and open boxes. And I do buy the more affordable ones because I'm so hard on them, and I don't mind when they break and I have to replace them often. And I'll let you in on a little secret. They can even make some cool marks in your artwork, especially if you're doing mixed media, you're using a thicker paint like a jelly gouache, you can scrape with them. Just get yourself a pair, you won't regret it. All the supplies that I'm going to mention today, of course, I have linked below in the description. So if you're curious, just take a look there. A makeup spinner tray or a double-decker Lazy Susan. So I actually ended up with 2 of these by accident. I bought one for my makeup about a year ago, and a second one came. And instead of sending it back, I was like, I think I could use this in the studio. Oh my gosh. This is what I do with mine. I put my most beloved, most often used supplies on it. So my brushes, my brush rests, little tiny porcelain palettes for mixing paint, things like that. What are the things that you use most often? Get yourself a Lazy Susan and get it filled up. Distraction is such a huge part of the art making process that we often don't think about when we're wondering why we just can't seem to stay on track. It's kind of like when you're wrapping holiday presents and you keep losing that little thing of tape and you're like, where's my tape? Where's my tape? Where's my scissors? Yeah, it's like that. You end up wasting a lot of time over, let's say an hour of trying to create art, just trying to find your supplies. This Lazy Susan is going to solve that for you. Next up are cute little wooden trays, and I like to have some that have compartments too. I use them in so many different ways. To organize my most beloved brushes that I use all the time to have right next to me. That's a big one. I use them to organize my swatching pages and then store them in like a sideboard or a cabinet in my studio to keep things from getting completely chaotic inside the cabinet. As a content creator, I use them to organize the tools or the props that I'm going to need for a filming session too. And then, as many of you know, I've mentioned in my book, Making Art for Joy's Sake, Free-Spirited Watercolor, I mentioned something called a magic cup in that book, where you create little cups full of art supplies that you can place throughout your home or in your car, so you have art supplies ready to go whenever inspiration strikes. Well, I also sometimes use these trays. Then honestly, sometimes I'll be making art in my studio and I'll feel like I need a change of scenery. And so I'll just grab a tray, throw everything that I'm using at that moment into the tray, and then take it to the new spot that I want to make art in. Okay, the continuous spray bottle. This is a new addition to my studio. For years, I've been using the traditional like squeeze and spritz style. But let me tell you what, this bad boy has changed the game for me. The simple fact that this spray bottle can continuously spray a fine mist of water over about a 6 or 7 second period without stopping just blows my mind every time I use it. And I really enjoy the fine mist as well that traditional spray bottles just cannot offer. So yes, do I use this to spray down my palettes? You bet. But I also use this in making art, wetting my page, adding a little bit of extra moisture to a concentrated area on my paper. Just grab one, you won't regret it. And you know what too? Your plants will love you for it. An ATG gun. And let me tell you what, don't go generic on this one, go with the 3M. My art teacher gifted me one of these one year for Christmas, and I was like, what do you want me to do with this thing? So basically what it is, it's a gun that dispenses double-sided pressure-sensitive adhesive. And I have used this thing in more ways than you could possibly imagine. I've hung artwork with it. I've taped things down to my painting table. I've mended things with this bad boy. It is indispensable. Once you have one in your life, you won't know how you survived without it. Oh, and little secret, if you run out of magnets when you're making your own watercolor half pan palettes, this stuff is waterproof and it sticks. Once you apply a little bit of pressure, it sticks. So yeah, you can glue those half pans into any palette that you want and you're good to go. I want to hear, friends, if you have an ATG gun or something similar and you have found it just as indispensable in your art life, would you share in the comments? People need to hear about this thing. I'm going to be shouting it from the rooftops for the rest of my life. So won't you help me out? And honestly, another thing that would help me out so much is if you're having a good time here and you feel like you're learning something, maybe I have mentioned a supply that you would have never dreamed. Would you give this video a boop? That's a like, and it really helps out my channel. Okay, a paper trimmer. Imagine only having a larger sheet of watercolor paper. It's like your last sheet. You're down to nothing. And you want to make it last longer. And you need to make a solid, straight, confident cut. Yeah, scissors are not what you need. So this $20-some Fiskars paper trimmer, it's kind of the pass-through style. It's not the guillotine style. That's an important distinction. This little guy is cheap but mighty. And it makes a solid cut effortlessly. You can also score with this. So you just apply a lot less pressure and you get the perfect fold line. I'm not a fan of getting frustrated on tasks that are supposed to be quick, easy, and effortless. But without the right tools, that's going to happen almost guaranteed. And having the ATG gun, for example, and this paper trimmer, it's like a power duo. These two items are going to remove so much frustration from your workflow and honestly will change the game. It'll change the vibe in your art making space. I know I'm making a lot of big promises. If you think I'm full of it, if you just don't agree, if you think it's more about the paint and the paper and the skill and all that, and the inspiration especially, if you think the tools don't matter so much, I would really like to hear your thoughts and I'd like to have you tell your story a little bit in comments. So go ahead down there and let's have a little debate. I love a debate. Yeah, let's get into it. If you've been around here for more than a minute, you've heard me talking about this stacking ceramic palette. It's an Amazon awesome product. And basically they're little tiny shallow dishes and they stack up upon each other. And then they come with this cute little lid. Now, the one that I love reminds me of Delft pottery, but they also make ones that are completely white, simple, and minimal. If you do any mixed media, you're bringing in acrylic or gouache and you need a place to mix colors and you don't want to contaminate your watercolor palette, something like this is fantastic. And you might be wondering, well, I could just use a plate, like a Corelle plate. Sure you could. This, though, takes up a lot less room on your painting table and gives you a lot of real estate for mixing at the same time. A book. A simple book. For me, nothing replaces actually having something I can hold in my hands to inspire my next piece of art. Because we've all been there where we have no idea what to paint next. And it can be at times as simple as picking up a book for me of, say, vintage botanical illustrations and immediately knowing that if I just open up the cover, there's going to be something inside that inspires me to paint something again. I don't know, maybe I'm showing my age, but just Googling doesn't do the same thing for me. So while it's not feasible for us to go out and build this huge library just for inspiration's sake, a few books, even one beautiful hardcover book with really well done illustrations and reproductions of artwork can go so far in becoming a useful tool for your low inspiration days. Now, speaking of low inspiration, there's something that I do, and yeah, it has to do with copying when I'm not feeling super inspired. So I want you to go check it out here. Watch this now. You won't believe what I'm going to tell you to do the next time you make art. Happy painting.